West. Eisenhower, 40 minutes, 390 to downtown. And the Stevenson, 45 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Speeds are reduced on the tollways due to the snow. I'm Jim Calamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast from the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center. Windy, frigid with blowing snow and accumulating snow, another 1 to 2 inches, a high of 19. 22 at O'Hare, 26 along the lakefront, dropping wind chills, and in some areas, some freezing fog. Your next news update is at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by HealthQuest Radio with Dr. David Kobaba. Every Saturday morning at 11, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. We're coming to you live from Signature Bank in Rosemont, Illinois, part of our AM 560 Signature Bank business tour that we are launching today, and we'll be peripatetically moving around the Chicagoland area, broadcasting at other businesses.
What common spelling? Peripatetically?
Yeah, sure. In a Socratic sense. Yes, that's right.
I'm going to use that word today. Thank you. The word of the day.
6 years in a row. So we're out of our ivory tower and out with the hoi polloi, starting with bankers of all things. Good grief.
Well, it's a good start.
We'll talk to one of the principals, one of the co-founders of Signature Bank at the bottom of the 7 o'clock hour. But now we want to update our conversation from yesterday per the indictment of that French actor Jussie Smollett. 6 counts of disorderly conduct per the special prosecutor, Dan Webb, in the case, 35 days before an election, and conspiracy theories abound in Fox camp that this is an effort to try to upend her as she's cruising to a renomination and re-election and so on and so forth. And she had more to say yesterday. She had a funder, I believe.
Well, all right, so she had a fundraiser last night, and what happened was people from inside the fundraiser made a human tunnel for her. So when she got out of her SUV with her driver opening the door, she went straight into the event so the media couldn't talk to her. She did speak, though, earlier in the day. They're trying to walk back the accusations that this may be politically motivated.
Do you accept the criticism from the Office of the Special Prosecutor that he's not getting the information he asked for?
You know, that I don't know. We certainly are cooperating as best we can, and our folks will be huddling up to make sure that he has everything that he needs. No, our office filed charges in this case. It's the disposition that was a cause for difference. But I think he has the facts and the evidence in the law to file charges.
Oh. Yeah, it's no big deal, and she's owned it. And we all just need to move on. One, singular mistake, and of course, we talked a little bit about yesterday. Focus on this. Don't focus on the other things that Kim Fox, Soros-financed Kim Fox, has done, like other Soros-financed prosecutors around the country, which is to release violent criminals to commit more violent crimes while they're awaiting trial or after they have served a light sentence with the charges reduced, even on matters like guns, while you're against the backdrop, you're watching commercials from Kim Fox as well as her main competitor, this Conway kid, talking about how they're going to take on the NRA. They're going to take on the NRA, but they won't take on violent criminals who commit crimes with guns on Chicago streets. And, of course, this is too much of a contradiction for Cook County voters to reconcile, so they'll just go ahead and renominate Fox.
And real quick, Mayor Lightfoot, she talked about this yesterday, supporting Dan Webb's investigation, but also it shouldn't want to get in the politics of it, Dan.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to wade into the political fray of this. The timing is the timing. But as I said, the charges themselves seem to virtually mirror what the grand jury had returned.
Seemed to be virtually obvious to everyone from the get-go in this case. Yes. Thank you for confirming what we all know to be true, Lori Lightfoot. Powerful statements from our elected officials. Courageous. Wow. Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you waited. And, of course, she's post-political.
Yeah,
this says, look, Kim Fox, she's too busy being a law enforcer. Lori Lightfoot is too busy in the business of governance to sully themselves with politics in Chicago and Cook County. Heavens to Betsy, of course. But Jussie Smollett and the subway, Jussie Smollett outside. Now I'm doing like
doing
a
the Dave
mashup
Chappelle,
of the Dave Chappelle. Jussie Smollett outside a subway is hardly the only hate crime hoax perpetrated. And so the question recently, there has been a spike in these swindles, and the question is why? Well, our next guest wrote a book about it called Hate Crime Hoax, How the Left is Selling a Fake Race War. He is Wilfred Reilly, who's a Chicago native, now an associate professor of political science at Kentucky State University, a historically black college. And he joins us now. Wilfred, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Dan.
So the Smollett case is obviously perhaps it is the most celebrated hate crime hoax of recent memory. But in your book, you document a number of other such instances that are equally ridiculous. Give us another example or two, and then the backstory in terms of why you decided to write this book.
Sure. And I will say, listening to that intro, the high for today is going to be 18, and the background on the politics. I am from Chicago, and that both brought back and moved away a little bit of nostalgia there. It sounds like things are pretty similar to what they've always been. But in all seriousness, the book Hate Crime Hoax, what I find in a sentence is that most of the most high-profile recent quote-unquote hate incidents, and to take you through a couple equally high-profile ones, I mean, Erica Thomas, the senator that claimed she was racially assaulted in a grocery store. What looked like the awful dreadlock cutting case in D.C., which will be in the new edition of the book. Covington Catholic, where the claim was that these high school athletes had abused an actual Native American shaman. They'd surrounded him, they chanted "Build the Wall," they'd shoved him, taken his sacred rain drum. Yasmin Saweed, the torn hijab on the New York 6 train. Hopewell Baptist, the claim that black churches were being burnt to the ground. You could just go on and on. I mean, all those turned out to be fakes. Duke Lacrosse, Goucher College. So I estimate in the book that at least 15% of hate incidents and a much higher percentage of high-profile incidents turn out to be absolute proven fakes, not sort of questionable cases, but demonstrable legal fakes. And the book was published by Regnery, obviously right-leaning but very serious press. There are academic articles coming out of it. So this isn't really disputed. The question is why? Why is this happening?
Well, why is this happening? I mean, after writing the book, have you discovered, everybody has their own reasons for making up a lie, but what is the real reason?
Well, I think that there are two primary reasons that you see. The first is a desire for just sort of the tawdry things that come along with quote-unquote crimes of any kind. So you'll see people fake hate crime incidents, for example, for insurance money and that sort of payout. You definitely saw that in Chicago, where our highest profile hate crime hoax was the burning of Velvet Ultra Lounge, sort of the popular youth club, very gay-friendly, that was out there by the border with Oak Park. I mean, I've had friends that went there to dance. The owner set that on fire, essentially, and wrote anti-gay slurs throughout the building, this kind of thing, in an attempt to collect what I believe was a $250,000 insurance payout. But beyond that, I think the motivation for many people is a sort of notoriety or a promotion of this idea of victimization. And that gets into a really interesting narrative that we've made victimization a thing of value or a thing of power in the United States. So, I mean, people understand to some extent that when they falsify one of these incidents, there's an automatic group of allies. Southern Poverty Law Center comes to mind. The NAACP has filed briefs in a bunch of these cases that are going to line up behind you and support this as though it's something that actually happened. After his attack, Jussie Smollett, the mad Frenchman, did 17 minutes to start off Good Morning America. So I think there are two motivations. One is just money, reward, but the second is the idea that we've made it a thing of value to be a victim or to be abused in the USA, which is, of course, clinically insane.
Right, but he thought he was going to get away with it, though. That's what really bothers me. I mean, he as if our police are that stupid that they're not going to, connect the dots to know that what he said happened didn't even happen.
Well, I think that one of the things that is unfortunate but real about this area of crime or this area of behavior is that people do almost always get away with it. If you look at what actually happens in the majority of these hate crime hoax cases, they're treated as though they very seriously honestly actually occurred, especially on college campuses. And even if they're uncovered, what you see is generally something like a single charge for the filing of a false police report. So the most interesting thing about hate crimes as a category isn't that they're all proven to be hoaxes, it's that there are no convictions in about 98% of them. If you look at data from California, for example, I mean, you have almost 1,000 claimed hate crimes in a typical year. Most recent year on record is 2017. But less than half of those actually involve charges brought by the prosecution, and the conviction rate in hate crimes is only about 6%. So unfortunately, even if you do falsify something, the odds are very, very high that you're never going to be prosecuted for that. It's never going to be proven exactly who wrote, the swastika on the bench. Was it a fraternity prank? Was it actual abuse? Or was it someone lying to make racial tensions even worse? We often never know.
And also, you have a lot of incentive for law enforcement because of the politically charged nature of these accusations. They want it to go away. There's there's not serious criminal penalties that attach, as you're describing. Number one, so why expend the resources only to inflame criticism from all sides?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. What you often see, and I think this is, obviously lean center-right politically. This is true of a lot of things covered by, quote-unquote, the left-wing media, the mainstream media. What you often see isn't a case being proven to have occurred or a case being proven not to have occurred, but what I jokingly call disappearing from the headlines. You kind of wonder whatever happened to that story. So if you look at a lot of the high profile, for example, incidents on college campuses after the election of Donald Trump, where students claimed that Trump supporters attacked them and beat them in one case, threw rocks at them in another case. Someone claimed their car was stolen. You don't find that there were any convictions in those cases, but you also don't find that anyone was prosecuted for false report. You basically just find that the paper trail stops. If you call the police department, they'll literally laugh and joke with you and say, well, I don't know, we're not working on that one too hard. So, yeah, there's not really not much motivation necessarily to say this was a fake.
Well, and then the flip side, since you brought up the press coverage of these incidents, the press coverage of the incident over the weekend in Jacksonville, Florida, where some 27-year-old kid takes his van and drives it through a Trump voter registration booth at a shopping mall. People dive out of the way. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. He's arrested. It's clear from the police report. Somebody had to do something with respect to Trump voters and registering deplorables and so forth. So it was clear that he was politically motivated. But this is not getting anything like the kind of coverage that any of the hate crime hoaxes you described received in the initial days.
Yeah, I do think, we don't want to be conspiratorial, but there obviously are slants in the media. I wrote a second book, Taboo, the 10 Facts You Can't Talk About, discussing some of these conversations you're not supposed to have. And one of the things I mentioned just in the intro to that book is that if you actually look at individuals who are killed in violent encounters with the police, about 70% of them are white. They're just Caucasian guys. But if you look at media coverage of police shootings, more than 90% of it focuses on about the 20% minority of cases that involve African American men. So there are definitely situations where storylines are created. I've never looked at, the data on one side versus the data on the other side, but I would be amazed if hate attacks on, for example, Republican voters receive the same level of coverage as, hate attacks on photogenic African-American kids or something like that. It's worth noting also that the hate crime laws themselves are fairly narrowly tailored. So attacking Republicans or even Democrats, if you look at sort of the political gangbanging from Antifa versus the Proud Boys and so on, those in general wouldn't be hate crime incidents. Hate crimes would be attacks based on race, sex, a very specific limited number of things, not social class, for example.
I wanted to also, since you teach at a historically black college, how are cases like the Jussie Smollett case and these other hate crime hoaxes, how are they treated? How was your book received on the campus of Kentucky State as compared to, say, you get around the country, speak at other college campuses, predominantly white colleges?
Oh, interestingly, historically black colleges don't have to pretend to be woke. I mean, some are. Harvard or Howard has a bit of a woke reputation. But I mean, the entire executive structure for my college, which includes me, is made up of upper middle class black guys. So there's not really necessarily a desire to breastfeed or, apologize for the deeds of our ancestors or whatever. So someone writing a best-selling right-leaning book at Kentucky State, there wasn't really much issue one way or another. And I will say, again, we at Kentucky State haven't had any of these incidents. I mean, again, our police department is a bunch of very well-qualified, no-nonsense black guys. So I think that there's a dramatic difference between how my book would be received at KSU or Morehouse or something like that, and how it would be received at, for example, the Claremont colleges, where I would be protested by a purple-haired crowd made up entirely of white people. So obviously, no dislike for either whites or African Americans, but I definitely think we haven't really had any of these problems. Yeah, purple hair, nothing wrong with it. Not my thing personally.
He is Wilfred C. Reilly. He's Associate Professor of Poli-Sci at Kentucky State University, author of the book Hate Crime Hoax, How the Left is Selling a Fake Race War. Wilfred Reilly, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Ford recalls 250,000 vehicles. BP plans to be net zero in emissions within the next 3 decades. And CVS posts quarterly earnings. Those stories next. In a recent survey, investors shared what they felt were the greatest threats to their retirement. It's no surprise the most common threats include stock market volatility, economic uncertainty, conflict in the Middle East, the 2020 presidential impeachment, and election. Unfortunately, there are many threats beyond your control that can affect your retirement savings. At Goldco, a leader in precious metals, the team believes one way to protect your investment portfolio is with physical gold and silver. Goldco has helped thousands of investors safeguard their retirement, especially in times of uncertainty. In fact, if you call 855-971-2006, Goldco will send you a free 1-ounce silver American Eagle coin. And all you have to do is pay for shipping and handling. No obligation. 100%